Hey everybody, it's your good old pal EmptyHero, and today, because I'm running low on classic Japanese horror games, which are actually as good as I remembered them being, we're going to discuss everyone's favorite digital disappointment, flanderized follow-up, and big suckable milk-laden breasted bastardization, Parasite Eve 2. Now don't get me wrong, Eve 2's thoughtful balance between real-time isometric shooting, experience points-based level progression, and strategically placed, fuckable little Asian girl toes that probably still smell of the last cat she stomped, combined to create a dynamic, if not slightly snail with a sprained ankle paced, survival horror shooter. The graphics hold up nicely, so long as you don't mind the occasional red-eyed Brianna Wu clone staring directly into your soul, probing for some secret sin that you've long since swallowed like an ember of hellfire, which only you, this abomination, and that woman you rolled down the highway embankment after wiping your nuts off on her wig know is burning you up from the inside. And Aya's mom jeans and shrouded dumper is so mitochondrially meaty that I can only assume her parasitically plumped up punani resembles a drooling donkey's lips on a hot summer's day. In fact, this sanctified semen scabbard probably has a divine vagina so equine that not only do sugar cubes make her wet, but her idea of getting kinky with a strap-on likely involves belting a bag of oats between her legs. Here, at the outset of our canon-breaking spin-off of a pseudo-sequel to a film adaptation of a Japanese light novel about a lonely surgeon who gets his booty hole plundered by a futanari waifu of his own design, players find the protagonist of the previous game, Aya Bray, is now a glow-in-the-dark FBI spook, which is fitting since this game's usage of FBI is actually a tongue-in-cheek acronym for Fat Butt Investigator, and tongue-in-cheek is exactly what I'd like to do to Aya after an especially sumptuous Taco Tuesday. Fresh off her latest assignment of swallowing sticks of butter until her cankles stick out further than her tight little brown rice ball dropping buttock cheeks, Aya is dispatched to the Acropolis Tower, where decades of Californian plus-size body positivity have frankly gone a little bit too far, and the fatties now graze for dropped french fries publicly and in the nude. There, among the corpses of Los Angeles SWAT team members and mounds of sopping wet hobo turds, which bear the impressions of penises in them, our Hermes the elf-haired heroine is assaulted by a literal titty monster, and frankly, I have always held a soft spot in my heart for this cutscene. It's not often that you can pinpoint the exact moment a woman becomes a feminist without a sworn affidavit signed by her father admitting to the date and time he first molested her. This piece of raw chicken-looking slam pig gets a load dumped inside of her in a way that only a black man with low self-esteem could accomplish, and the front butt plug you can loot from its father-disappointing corpse raises the existential question of how this transgendered abomination could die now while also wearing a die later. A golem then appears on the rooftop, which is great if you're a sad little fellow named Lem who needs some encouragement. But for the rest of us, this character just further perpetuates harmful anti-Semitic stereotypes, since golems are created and controlled exclusively by Jews. On a completely coincidental side note, Larry Silverstein moved all of his gold bars out of the Acropolis Tower's basement the morning before the bioweapon outbreak, and George Soros just so happens to manage all the funds for Parasite Lives Matters. Furious that he'll never play the flute due to having dry-ass burn victim lips, this mitochondrial monkey man activates an appalling array of American airliners that he secretly strapped to the steel beams of the Acropolis Tower while everyone else was simultaneously blinking, and Aya escapes thanks to the one helicopter pilot who was smart enough to work for Squaresoft instead of Capcom. After realizing that Aya escaped the explosion without ever warning the beat cops guarding the entrance to the tower of their impending death in a paroxysm of hellfire and tumbling debris, and that Aya herself is an ass-play aficionado with highly contagious microorganisms infesting every cell of her being, Aya's boss dispatches her to a truck stop where a woman so thoughtless, yet so thoughtful, was more likely to be appreciated. There in Dryfield, Aya gives into her innate impulse as an agent of the American federal government to trespass on private property and immolate other people's children simply because their parents were stockpiling weapons without swearing an oath of allegiance to Israel first. Along the way, players confront the mythological Updog, befriend an obvious double agent who's only playing nice with Aya long enough to steal her mom jeans the next time she takes them off completely to take a poop, as we all do, and the enticing aroma of freshly brewed gamer girl bathwater attracts the unwanted attention of a hot-headed simp. At this exact moment in the game, the developers ceased integrating the plot of PEEV 2 with its gameplay, and these degenerate furry abominations perform an apt impression of the quality of Parasite Eve 2 the moment players leave Dryfield. Players battle a skinless horse in a mine because, why not battle a skinless horse in a mine? If you had literally anything else better to do with your time, believe you me, this is the point to stop. After a couple hours of wandering a generic laboratory, replete with constantly respawning enemies, it is revealed that all of the monsters in the game were created with DNA stolen from a cucumber that Aya tossed out of her bedroom window. Later, in order to secure the profits of oil barons for generations to come, players power down an electricity-generating monster by disconnecting a completely different kind of butt plug than most of us are probably accustomed to. This opens up the way to a fateful encounter against Aya's autistic mini-me, and Squaresoft tries in vain to make players care about this clone, despite the fact that she was literally controlling all of the creatures which were trying to kill Aya up to that point. Frankly, if I felt like forgiving my offspring for attempting to kill me, I wouldn't have welded the doors to the cellar shut all those years ago. Let me state plainly, for the record, fuck Eve, that retarded little cunt. Kyle tries to cap her immediately after realizing that he could never sleep soundly at night, knowing he had hooked up with a sub-prime Aya while there was a younger model running around. And she stabs around in poisonous gas so stubbornly that I only wish I had another 5,999,999 more of her to leave behind. The only highlight of the second half of the game was when Eve gets swallowed by what I can only assume is my own penis. The thrilling battle against a never-before-mentioned Sephiroth clone ensues, and look, I get that I'm skipping over a lot of locations and enemies in this review, especially the Dino Crisis Island that nobody likes. I wish I could have skipped over them in the game as well. Our story then caps off with Aya and her own original character, Ayachu, hanging out at the museum from the first game, and the double-triple reverse agent who shot us for no good reason appears in the shadows as if literally anybody in the world cared that he survived. And fittingly enough for a game which stars a member of the FBI, the mysterious group behind the neo-mitochondrial attacks and their motivations are never revealed, as doing so may have inadvertently incriminated a Clinton. Meow, normally at this point in the video, I'd end by shilling my delightful novels Europe, Hillary's Invasion, Split in Two, and Europe 2 Barack's Apocalypse, but the writing of Parasite Eve 2 is just so soul-drainingly devoid of merit that I feel the need to talk a little bit about writing fiction in general. Fiction is the outward expression of a person's life experience, cherished childhood dreams, and most repressed inner desires, the umbilicus that bridges a man to his creator. Fan fiction, on the other hand, is the mental retreat of those who can only imagine themselves in a fantastic setting through the lens of someone else's vision. The invisible hand which strokes first the ego, then the penis, taint, and balls. Tonight's game, much like the tub of cocoa butter I precariously balanced atop my bare and trembling thighs during the shower cutscene, fell somewhere in between, long before the climax. Sure, the original Parasite Eve was so completely tangential to its source material that it could just as easily have not been a licensed game, but the writers of that original game understood the concept of in-character player motivation. I stormed Central Park alone, not because that was the cool actiony girl thing to do, but because, thanks to her mutated mitochondria, She was the only person in the world who could prevent her partner's wife from transforming into a pool of orange tang, which is an especially awful fate once you realize that, as a black woman, if she had to become tang, Loretta obviously would have preferred being flavored grape. In Parasite Eve 2, Aya goes from one place to the next simply because that was the next area of the game where there were enemies for her to shoot. At no point is she justified in not waiting for backup, especially since there's a point where backup arrives and wipes out a gigantic horde of enemies instantly, and she might as well have traveled between levels by jumping into magical paintings for all the thought that went into the final locations. The quiet moments from the original Peeve are gone, and instead of Aya having to come to terms with her identity as the only non-chicken nugget embryo-looking offspring of the mitochondrial Eve, by having an enemy suddenly cry, "I am not an elephant! I am not an animal! I am a human being!" There are just these gross things for the player to mindlessly kill that step over like a hooker in the night. The fact that the enemies in this game are all retarded clones of the protagonist is never developed beyond Parasite Eve 2 meta status as a half-retarded clone of the original game. Well, that's it for tonight's video. If you made it this far, you're probably the kind of cool dude who would subscribe to the channel and recommend this video to a friend. If you don't have any friends, that's okay, you smelly weirdo. I'll be your buddy. Just don't let me catch you trying on my cum sock. I'd like to thank everyone who supported this channel so far by sharing the links, donating during streams, and funding these videos directly on Patreon. I could not have crafted this elaborate waste of my intellect without you special boys, girls, and disgusting perverts who insist on spamming my Discord with drawings of themselves as Hooter waiters, despite the fact that we all know a femboy Hooters would fail spectacularly due to the hot dogs tasting like shit. Thanks for coming out, God bless this mess, and goodbye!